about process and just showing you, you really got to kind of think this ahead quite a bit in order to have this work. And so last night I just did it while I was watching TV, these rough drafts. So sometimes I find that if I have a little freedom, I don't have as many constraints of trying to make things perfect. I do a lot of rough drafts because that's where you get the freedom. If you're trying to make something perfect, it can get wooden and very stiff very, very easily. So I would recommend that you save a bunch of scrap paper. And see, I've got these eyes again here, so that's going to kind of lead people back to this idea. So that's what's called a distractor. And so little brother's eyes, they might say, oh, I see big eyes here. Oh, must be here. Oh, no, that doesn't look anything like him, so he must be hiding somewhere else. So you try to think of what the thought pattern of the viewer might be, and we're all wired differently, so I could be way off on that, but that's my distractor for that guy. Okay. All right, let's see. We got these pleats in the bed, and that's where I'm going to hide the funnel. So I just got to make sure that the funnel is viewable and that somebody would ever find it, because you don't want to make it be like the Easter egg hunts I've had sometimes where you find the rotten egg about 3 months later. That's no fun, kind of stinky. So got to make things so that they're visible and yet not obvious. So it's a trick, fun trick. It's fun to think. Okay, got the soccer ball. So you can see it's starting to take shape according to my plan. It's a little bit different than my plan, but plans are good. And finally got some nice weather today. This is like the rainiest summer that I can remember. 4th of July was, whew, I don't know. I don't know what they had here in Saratoga, but we had 3 days of rain. And that's difficult. We got a house full of company, especially. Okay, so what else we got to get in here? I guess we're down to finalizing some of the animals. Throw a few more boxes in here. And then we'll be ready for ink, which is probably going to be a lot more fun and a lot easier for folks to watch. Okay, so we got that. Let me get this. All right, and this. Okay. So I'm going to start from the top down because even though this is going to be permanent ink, it does take a few seconds to dry.
I'm going to keep it simple for right now. I'll be back though. This is awesome.
And I got to get my little handle of my pancake flipper in here. And just the other arms and legs of the turtle. Get my ice cream cone in here. The ice cream cone should be pretty easy to find, because it's gonna cut this band on the top of the drum sort of in half. And I made these little drippy marks to make it even a little bit more easy to find. But when you've got a lot of clutter, just like that Easter egg hunt, it's hard to find everything. Even if it's obvious, you don't know where to look. And that's the artist's trick. Keep them looking. Make it busy enough. Make it interesting enough that people will want to make their eye go round and round and round. As a painter, I learned that sometimes it's not that something looks exactly like something, but that it's interesting, and that it's interesting for both someone's brain as well as their eyes, so that they continue to look around and round and round and don't get bored with the painting. When it's on their wall or in the gallery or whatever, they'll want to come back and find out. Patterns, shapes. The drip art that's so popular now is Very interesting stuff with those organic drips and so on. Okay, so I think I've got my animals just about set that we can move on to the ink.
Okay.
And they're in sort of like interesting juxtapositions. They're not all in the same direction. That starts to get into principles of design. So you guys are getting a whole semester of studio art here in a couple hours. But anyway, principles of design. Contrast is a big one. And when I teach that, there's all kinds of contrast. There's contrast in dark and light. There's contrast in color. There's contrast in direction. There's contrast in size. So for these stuffed animals on here, we've got multiple directions. Angles are always good in a design. So you're thinking of being a designer as well as somebody who is hiding pictures, as well as somebody who is basically guiding the viewer, tricking the viewer to look at what they want them to look at. That's called focal points or emphasis. And so I'm getting people, this bear will make people look up here because it's a natural vector. All right. So you've got to keep things going and keep things different if you're going to make them work. Okay, let's figure out the hammer first real quick so that we don't muck that up when we go to ink. Because when you go to ink, you don't want to have to be using a whole ton of whiteout. You want to be able to roll with it. So this preliminary stuff, as I nest the claw in around this bear's ear, I've got the natural ear, and all the junk on the bed should confuse people enough that they don't find this hammer right away. So let's see if we can get the head of the hammer lined up with the board that's right under this dresser drawer or nightstand drawer. Okay. And now if I really wanted to hide it, I could probably do different grain, different stuff like that. But I think that'll be enough to hide that and still make it findable. Okay, so I'm on the post of the bed. I'm coming up to the big finish here on the layout. And I got to get my spoon in over here. That one should be fairly obvious. So I'm taking this sort of oval shape in here as the bowl of the spoon. And then I'm going to make the handle fit into that rung or whatever you call it that's on the bedpost. So let's just stick Man in the Moon in here. Make sure that we can get him in here. It's kind of skinnier than... Okay, so when I take this Man in the Moon, he's got to fill exactly. Now, he's got to look exactly this shape, possibly a different size, and possibly rotated to the vertical, but he's got to fit right in here in that key so that people can see him. And if I stick the pillow in here, this dent for his nose can become a wrinkle, it can become a shadow, whatever I want it to become. Okay, so I think we're ready to rock and roll. We'll just fake all this stuff. The binding on the books, there are distractors on there because I'm going to put, like, you know how they put the title on a different colored band maybe on some books than the actual color of the cover. Well, that's going to hide the baby bottle collar or the neck of the bottle, and then the nipple of the bottle will fit right in here where the pig's arm is. So that one should be a little tricky to find. Let's put a book on top of that one. And so then when we go to finish this, we don't have so many surprises of, oh dear, where do things, I didn't make that quite the right size, blah, blah. Okay. All right, so a minimal sort of homage to perspective. You got to kind of keep it looking like things are projecting toward the viewer, but it doesn't have to be crazy. So I'm going to put a line of milk or something in this baby bottle. Getting a little mucky, so I'm going to go like this. All right. Baby bottles have probably changed so much now that I wouldn't even recognize a baby bottle. I know some of them are weird shapes and stuff, but we're going to go with the old-fashioned baby bottle. There we go. It's still a baby bottle, and they'll have a key, and parents will know what it is. And grandparents will definitely know what it is. Let's throw some boxes in here, and we're good to go. Okay, we got enough junk in that room. So there we go. All right, I see that I've got some gross lead graphite stuff all over my hand. I usually bring a pair of baby wipes with me, or a bag of baby wipes, but I might have a wet one in here. If not, I will, I don't know, spit on a paper towel or ask Bob for some Windex or something. Bob, you got anything? Bob, you are a blessing. This is Bob Wheaton, and he is a standard here in Saratoga, and he's the one who's responsible for all of these tapings, and he does all of this just as a volunteer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's a lot of his time, so we really appreciate. Give him a little plug here. He does some beautiful, beautiful postcards of local buildings and paintings of local buildings, and his latest is, you call them walkthroughs?
Yeah, walkabouts.
Walkabouts. Yeah. So he's taking all these cool videos where he's showing you the sights of Saratoga, and he posts them on his Facebook page, right?
Yep. Facebook, YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube. So check those out. They're awesome. And thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Okay, so sports fans or hidden picture fans, I just kind of cashed in a big way. A friend of mine, I live at Peck's Lake, a friend of mine unfortunately lost his wife, who was an extremely gifted artist, and he's trying to downsize now. So I bought a bunch of custom-made furniture and a lot of art supplies and pens. So this is a tribute to Jane Rudio, gifted artist, who I have inherited her pens, which are very, very nice, small nib point. Okay, so these are all pens that have different nib widths, and I'm going to start out with this one. It is acid-free and light, fast, fade-proof, all kinds of good stuff. I'm just looking for, okay, it's an 01, so it's a pretty small nib, and I'm just going to start going around stuff. When I get to Tommy, I'll probably have to look at the Tommies before. I'll go ahead and not be afraid to use some drafting tools here, even though the whole thing is a little bit, you know, kind of sketchy, so I'm not going to care if they're not perfect. All right, so that sketchy style is part of that freedom I was talking about. You don't want to spoil that. You don't want to make it so stiff that it looks like a blueprint here, but we'll throw this in. I don't think anything's hidden in the door frame anyway. I was tempted, but I never got to it. I think I was looking at the hammer for that too. And of course I didn't use my T-squares, so these are going to be a little off anyway. Okay, so that's all right. You can always fake it with wood grain or something. A faker from way back. Okay, all right. But kids can relate to things that aren't that perfect. I've seen children's books where, you know, they're very, very expertly painted. These paintings take, oh, I don't even want to know how long those illustrators, it took them. But Margie, the author, suggested that she wanted, you know, I don't want stick figures, I think was her first email. So these are fairly developed, and they'll be pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I usually work from left to right so that I'm not dragging my hand through. So let's play with that idea of going left to right. I'm going to try to keep the line weight the same, so I'm not going to use any kind of a calligraphic pen yet, but I will eventually. There's my lamp. Little curve. Get that little oval on top so that you show some depth, right? Incomplete line there, because the hand I'll probably, you know, have a little more detail. So I'm just going to kind of suggest that. I think I had a little alarm clock or something here, so we'll throw that in. Hope for the best. Little stopper thing on top. So if my circle face of my clock isn't exactly a circle, I'm not going to have nightmares over that. That's the beauty of illustration. As long as you get your message across, I think we're pretty golden. We'll just suggest some numbers here. A little face. I don't know. Here. We're going to make it 1210. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to go right into this. Boom. Now, what I should probably do, and I'm going to, is look back to just make sure that I have the bed the same as I had it in other illustrations. So they got the bed in a lot of stuff. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so it looks like rung, like a bulbous thingy there with a little thingy in between and that. Let's check another one just to make sure. Here it is again. I'll probably do the same thing here. So I've got that longish part here, a little ring, and a little bulb on the end. So good enough. Just trying to keep it a little bit of, get a little continuity. Okay, so we said there's a little ring here, so we'll put a little ring. Bloop, bloop. Okay, and we're gonna go into that bulbous part here. I don't want to make it too bulbous or it's going to look funny around that hammer. Okay, and then actually if we put the hammer in kind of perspective, we can call that the bulb end of the hammer. Like the end of the, the tip of the handle of the hammer. And what I'll probably have to do is straighten that out just a little bit, like this. A little green in there. I got that extra line. I'm not going to worry about it. Make that a little more bulbous. I can always do the same thing over here, turn it into a shadow.